Hello, welcome to another one of Utah Business's live streams. I'm Elle Griffin, Editor-in-Chief of Utah Business, and today we are talking about taking your business online. I'm talking with some people who are especially expert at this subject. I'm speaking with Joe Megabo, who's the CEO of Purple, Talib Noor Mohammed, CEO of Jane, and Dan Jimenez, President and COO of Chatbox. So welcome.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Thank you. Absolutely.
I know anyone who's watching at home, feel free to ask your own questions. We have the Q&A section, there's the chat section, put whatever you want in there. But I'm gonna go ahead and get us started with the first question, which is, right now we're in a time and have been for several years where brick and mortar is somewhat on the decline and e-commerce has been on the rise. This has been especially prevalent this year as we've seen the pandemic really alter a lot of brick and mortar business. A lot of businesses are looking at moving online or really expanding online if they haven't already. As you are all in the e-commerce space and some of you even have some brick and mortar presence, I wanted to just start by asking, how has this year been compared to years past? And maybe we'll just start from there.
Joe, would you like to go first? Yeah,
sure. I'll jump in. And our perspective may be a little different as we've operated in both channels. We're a manufacturer of mattresses. It's the grid you see behind me here is our secret sauce. This is our unique material that our beds are made from, and a big part of our strategy has been feel. It's been, making sure that consumers can see what it's like and understand what's so different about us. So we've always done both, which has meant while the majority of our net revenue has been driven through e-commerce and online, we've also been very aggressive in getting our product out to our wholesale partners. So Macy's or Nordstrom's or Mattress Firm or regional furniture stores, where people can experience firsthand. This year, obviously, things changed a lot. Where about a third of our business was being driven through wholesale when COVID-19 hit, that dropped to, we had months that it was 10% or less. So all of that business just dried up overnight. And what was more interesting, and of course, none of us really knew what was going to happen. What was more interesting is how quickly all of that demand, all of that addressable market pivoted online. And, in a category like ours, which is a premium considered an infrequent purchase, in brick and mortar, it was more like a $2,000 or $3,000 purchase. To see that kind of demand on someone who historically had preferred that in-person experience where the majority of the market lives, to be able to move online, and do so, rather quickly, and buying the same product, the same mix, the same premium product, was just a fascinating change, and one that fortunately was very lucrative for us as we were able to lean into that. And I think has accelerated a lot of online adoption with customers who likely wouldn't even have considered buying online. You factor that in with a focus on home and a focus on health, and you focus that on with increased discretionary spend as consumers haven't been taking vacations and trips and doing expensive entertainment, sporting events and so forth. It was just a number of factors that those who are focusing in the right categories online have seen an enormous shift online. I think it's worth noting that it's shifting back, and happy to talk about that later. But the last 6 months have seen just incredible online growth.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think, to Joe's point, the consumer behavior, the speed with which consumer behavior pivoted was quite a remarkable thing. And for us, Jane had been growing pretty well entirely. Jane is, of course, entirely online, but the growth had been fairly consistent. And we had started to really think about how you expand where you're selling, how do you expand your category selection and variety. And for better or for worse, the shift in consumer behavior actually forced us to do that a little bit more quickly than we wanted to. So our ability to pivot into new categories, our ability to move more quickly into marketing in different parts of the country where we hadn't previously been was actually driven by the fact that there was all of this demand and this complete shift in where consumers were looking. And of course, our price point is much lower than Joe's. So there were a couple things that really happened. First is discretionary spending was now moving online, and goodness, a $30 or $40 purchase is something that's just a nice pick me up during the course of a very, very difficult, complicated time. But at the same time, we were selling things that people now needed more of now that they were at home. More comfortable stuff, more stuff for the home. How do I entertain my kids? What are the things that I can do to just be a little bit more comfortable where I am? And so as that trend started to kick in for us, we had to really work with our suppliers to say, listen, this is what we're seeing in the market, and we recognize you're dealing with supply challenges, but here are the things that people really need more of, and can you help spin those things up? And first it was bespoke masks, and then it was really creative masks, then it was comfort wear, then it was sweatshirts. Now going into holiday, it's stuff for the home. So that shift has been something that we have been working really hard with our suppliers to try and meet as well. And whereas in some categories, I think like Joe mentioned, there is a shift to offline. In our world, we're seeing that there is this consistent growth and behavior change where people have realized that, in fact, as they get comfortable with sizing, as they get comfortable with taking a little bit more risk on lower priced items, it's still okay to shop online and to keep that momentum going as they're thinking about shopping for holiday, and as they think about back to school in whatever form that now has taken, and what it will mean for January. So we're continuing now to learn from what our customers are asking us and telling us as what they need in this new era. And we're just making sure that we're able to meet that demand and making sure our supply side is really in tune with what customers are asking for and what we think they will be asking for on the basis of where the world is now headed.
Yeah, for Chatbox, 2020 has been an interesting year in kind of two respects. And I think for those that don't know Chatbox, we print photo books from the photos on your phone or your computer. But we're 100% online, and the vast majority of what we do is from mobile phones. So we had has been discussed, we had this wave of buying behavior moving to e-commerce, which was helpful for us at certain times of the year. But what drives our product are the photos that people are taking, and photos and just the events around taking photos. Could be travel, could be getting together with family, birthdays, whatever it may be. And so we saw the up the funnel from the photo book creation step, but rather the photo taking, that was actually changing year over year. And through the summer, we saw less photo activity on Instagram, less photos being put onto people's camera rolls. And so it was just pretty evident that because of the reduction in travel and everything else, that was kind of impacting that. So for us, it's been a mix of been really great for e-commerce and a solution that you can make from, or something that you can purchase or a gift you can give from the comfort of your own home. But at the same time, you have to have that pipeline of what is going to create the product that is going to fill it.
That's interesting because, yeah, Talib and Joe are both in industries where there's a lot of comfort items that you can purchase, whereas Dan, Chatbox is more of a, we need to be doing fun adventures and happy weddings that people want to have photos of. So that's interesting that maybe has been a little bit different.
Yeah.
From other industries. Have you, how are you looking at this going into the holidays?
For us, the holiday is still a really significant part of our business. And traditionally for printed photo products, it's all about Christmas. It's all about the 5 weeks leading up to it. With our business model and the way that we connect to people's Instagram or to their social media, and that creates these photo books that come throughout the year. We're a bit more countercyclical than I would say that traditional photo book brands. So that's been helpful for us, but the holiday is a big piece. So it's a little bit of just we're going to wait and see. We've been around for 5 years, and so this is, I think, our first time through an economic kind of downturn in the cycle. And talking to our partners, it seems that in downturns, like in 2008 and 2009, it was actually helpful for our category, and drove an increase in in business like holiday cards and gifting. So I think there are dynamics for and against, what might drive a lot of volume for us right now. So we're just trying to get ready, and especially on the supply chain side of things, what we do is, we print on demand. So we have to be at the ready for it when the orders come in, and make sure that all of our different production facilities are safe and staffed. And so that's kind of more of the concern for us right now.
Yeah, how are you guys
I
right now?
Go ahead, Joe.
Just on, yeah, I was going to say, just building off of Dan for a minute on the holiday side. I do think there's an important thing to note, which you sort of the tactics of building successful online businesses. All three of our companies are involved physical goods. All three of our companies ultimately are products that consumers can hold in their hands or lay on or wear, but they're physical goods that have to be shipped, fulfilled, and enter the person's home. And that's part of the challenge in running a successful online business, is how do you actually service that customer end to end. And I do think it's a topic that's going to be increasingly a focus this holiday, as the headwind here is, with the rapid increase in consumer demand and adoption of online, the infrastructure to actually service that customer, and this is the logistics players that deliver packages, your FedExes and UPS and other freight carriers, that capacity hasn't grown at all over the last 6 months for any intents and purposes. So it is overwhelmed, just overwhelmed. I saw a study that Google, little internet company, Google published, that they estimated that as many as 700 million gifts are at risk of not being delivered in time for holiday this year. So and if you think traditional brick and mortar, while online is attractive in many ways right now, there is something about brick and mortar that you can, in theory, walk into a brick and mortar store the day before Christmas, buy something, and walk out. That's just never been an option online because of fulfillment times. But I think this year is going to be increasingly challenging, as even if you can get the product, even if you have the availability to put something on a truck, which many retailers are struggling with, is they're just getting allocations on cubic inches in the trucks. But even if you can get it on the truck, the ability for the networks to actually fulfill in time and meet their SLAs is at risk as well. So it's an interesting holiday. You've got the tailwind of incredible demand and discretionary spend shifting online, and consumer adoption and acceptance. But it's going to be also challenging, as that comes with a cost, as these are still all physical product that we got to get to the consumer. And it remains to be seen how effective we all are through this holiday.
Yeah, I'd add to that. There's a couple of interesting complexities that, as Joe articulated, we depend on others to make this happen. I think there's, in our world, there's probably a couple of other complexities. For Jane, we're dealing with hundreds of sellers, right? All of whom need to hopefully adhere to and abide by a series of shipping rules, notwithstanding what's going on in their own lives, what's happening potentially in lockdowns in their states, or challenges they might be having in their own businesses. So we have to make sure that all of the supply chain at its source is able to push the product into those networks at the right time, so that they're able to get delivered, as Joe says, in time for the holidays. There's also this other interesting complexity that I think for the three of us, and certainly for others like us, is going to be new. What does a new version of holiday actually mean? And where you may not necessarily be doing large family gatherings, what does this mean for gifting? What does this mean for how much shopping you're going to do for others versus your own family or yourself? Are people feeling an economic pressure going into this holiday season they haven't felt in the past? Given all of the online shopping that happened in the last 2 quarters, are they going to be more reserved, less reserved? Now, there's some good indications that we're getting, from Singles Day and other data points that show that people are going to, and Amazon Prime Day is a good example, that people are going to shop. But we don't know. I think for all of us, this is the first year where the only thing we can all honestly say is that we just don't know, when we look back in January, what will have transpired, and to be able to predict what will transpire through this through the next 5 weeks, which is a really interesting and at the same time very frightening kind of prospect. But it does allow you to take some more risks, allows you to try some new things. and to be able to potentially put stuff into the world in the way that you may not have before. But it does, I mean, at least for me, it does keep me up at night wondering how people are going to respond and what that behavior is going to be over the next few weeks.
The e-commerce society didn't send you the standard issue crystal ball. I've got
Oh,
mine if you need to borrow it.
Yeah.
Take you up on that.
Yeah. To that, both of those I think were really good points, and I think that from us, the transit times and the effect that this is going to have on the third-party logistic providers and the shippers is a huge point of uncertainty for us. And so for us, every year setting that that order deadline for guaranteed delivery in time for Christmas is always a big exercise because we want to maximize and push that date as late as possible. But once that order's placed, it's got to get printed and then it's got to get shipped, right? And then not having it in time for Christmas that's just not acceptable, right? So for us, the strategy this year is we've pushed back our deadlines, or we've made our deadlines a few days earlier, and then have a strategy as we or a plan that as we get closer to those deadlines and we can observe the transit times that we're actually getting from that we will, if we see that they are keeping up with their SLAs and that we can push it maybe a day or two longer or deeper into the season, then we'll have the surprise, like, hey, you have one more day. And normally we try to stay away, we try to stick with the exact deadlines that we have marketed because you don't want to erode the consumer trust. But it's going to be just, I think, a day by day analysis to see where everything is in the pipeline and how well USPS, UPS, FedEx is keeping up with all these deliveries.
How are you anticipating that? Like, what are you anticipating the challenge to be? That there's more gifts than usual, more things being sent, shipped, fulfilled?
Yeah, I think that we're just anticipating the trend of this year of just the rise in e-commerce to continue, and I think we're already seeing that these shippers are struggling to keep up with the demand because, like we said, it's hard for them to scale their capacity up and down. And so, yeah, I think that's just the trends of 2020 in terms of the rise of e-commerce are going to continue into the holidays, my expectation.
Yeah, nearly every retailer is on an allocation from the fulfillment partners right now. If you were to call up a UPS or FedEx and say you want to kick off a contract with them, you'd likely be told, call us in January. There's no capacity right now. I mean, we historically, I mean, we're a little bit bigger. We just announced through Q3 and have done 475 million year to date. So I mean, we're moving a lot of product. 2 months ago, we were already at our limits with FedEx, who has been our primary carrier and who we have a master agreement with. So I mean, we had to add UPS to our stable of carriers whom we didn't at the time even have a contract with. We've since put an MSA in place, and we're doing more than 10% of our fulfillment through UPS because FedEx can't take any more packages. And we've had to expand our freight providers because we do in-home delivery, and we have heavier items, more furniture-like that FedEx or UPS can't take. And every retailer is facing this right now. And then even with that, parts of the country, California, for instance, FedEx is a impacted area for FedEx. Where SLAs are frequently missed. Something that should be delivered in 2 or 3 days might take 5 or 6 days where it gets there, but just their ability to actually sort the packages and get them into the distribution network to then be fed out to the home is just overwhelmed. So, I mean, all of this good business we're all getting that's moved online, it's why I brought up the point of physical goods. There still has to be warehouses and manufacturing and product and logistics, and all these things have to keep up with it. It's different than an e-commerce business where, just turn the server up a little bit. And it's a very real challenge this year as the growth rate in e-commerce has far outpaced the infrastructure.
Yeah, and if you look at real numbers, right? I mean, look at a business like ours. We'll do a quarter billion in sales this year. But at a lower price point than Joe's. Think about the number of parcels we're going to put into the system, right? So we'll be responsible for somewhere on the order of 7 million packages from our sellers. And we're not, we're growing, but we're not Amazon. We're not, we're not Chewy or Etsy or someone of that size yet. And so if you think about everybody growing 30, 40, 50, 20%, 10%, what that actually means in terms of network capacity, it's a very, very real problem, right? You didn't see 30% more FedEx planes in the sky. You don't see 30% more UPS trucks on the ground. You don't see 30% increased warehouse capacity. And so something's got to give somewhere. And, whether it's going to be delays, whether it's going to be, more of these like individual folks running parcels for last mile, as we're starting to see in some communities, whether it's Uber or others taking this on as part of their service offering, TBD. But the reality is that even if people want in some places now to be able to run in and get something from the store, they may not be able to because of a lockdown. They may not be able to for a variety of reasons. They may not be able to because that store couldn't get their supply in. So everyone is kind of facing this crunch. And whether you're dependent on folks that are going to be your LTLs who are moving much larger product, or you're depending on USPS to deliver a small envelope, you're running up against the very, very same capacity issues. So, we can only do what we can do in terms of getting really good quality stuff ready for customers to buy. We can improve our conversion rates. We can do all the stuff we have to do. The second that the product leaves our hands, we are truly at the mercy of somebody else. So it's a very interesting and very uncomfortable kind of place. And so you just hope that the carrier networks are able to really keep up as best as they can. And, I can't imagine what it's like to be them right now, the abundance of all of this opportunity, but the physical constraints of being able to meet it must be an incredibly challenging thing.
I think the key here, though, is while we're all geeking out a little bit on what happens under the hood, to the consumer, they don't care about any of this. They don't care who your carrier is. At the end of the day, if that Jane package comes 2 weeks late, they're going to be calling up to leave here. I mean, it's what responsibility do we have for our brands and our customer experience and we may all be giving appeasements. We may all be doing things to keep these customers happy, but it's on us as brands to service our customers. It's on us as brands to own that long-term relationship. And it's part of the challenge. You could think, hey, e-commerce is easy. They just come from anywhere, but it's part of the challenge we're going to have in managing through these things.
And part of it is educating the customer, right? Making sure they know, being as transparent and upfront with them as we can, and saying, listen, get your orders in earlier than you ordinarily would, and to really give them what they need and the information they need upfront to be able to make decisions earlier in the cycle, so that there is that lead time, so there isn't disappointment.
Yeah.
But to Joe's point, we do own that, and we need to make sure that we do our part in taking care of that customer relationship. Because as Joe says, customer doesn't care whether it's FedEx or USPS. They care about Purple or Jane or Chatbox or whoever they're transacting with.
Yeah. And in the customer, I think all of us as consumers, we've just grown accustomed to an Amazon world where it's 2 days away, or if you're lucky, maybe it's next day. And for these things, they're either, like a big mattress that is hard to get somewhere across the country in 2 days, or it's a photo book that you actually have to make before you can ship it. We live at the mercy of a consumer psyche of everything should be here in 2 days. And that's a special challenge on its own.
How do you account for returns or the customer not being happy? Because all of you, as you said, are selling tactile products that the consumer in a lot of cases doesn't get to touch, feel, see, try on before they're purchasing. Do you have to account for that?
For us, returns is a special thing because that photo book is of no value to us to get back, and it's of no value to anybody else. So if there's something wrong with your order, we reprint it and we ship it to you as fast as we can at no cost to the customer. So that's a little bit of a different dynamic, but yeah, we try our best to help the customer visualize, what is this book going to look like? What's it going to feel like? But there isn't a guide shop yet where they can go in and actually handle an example of one. So it's a little bit different for us.
And in mattress, in a lot of ways, it's similar to Dan in that, compressing, compacting, rolling up a 200-pound item that once they've opened it up and put it into their bedroom, which, if it's one of our heavier, more expensive mattresses, had a crew come in and do that for them. It's not that simple to toss it in the back of your your Prius and get it to the post office. It's just not viable. And then on top of that, depending on state, some states don't even allow the resale of used mattresses. Some allow for refurbishing, but there's very, very strict health codes. So, but we have to, in our industry, there's both precedent and it's getting it right for the customer. We offer a 100-day, no questions guarantee. And it is something that, you said, do we account for it? Yes, we absolutely have to account for it. It is part of our accounting, is a certain amount of loss that we just build into our business. And, it's kind of like a marketing cost. It's just something we have to build in. But even there, it creates e-commerce opportunities. So we have helped build another company we partner with that has done very well growing with us, a company called ShareTown, where they have a network of, it's another gig economy business. They have a network of people who will go pick up mattresses at no cost to us, refurbish them and resell them in markets that they're resellable as a great value on a lightly used, fully sanitized, refurbished mattress that we then get a rev share on. So instead of a catastrophic loss of the economics and, potentially even having to pay even more to have a crew come in and trash it, we've turned it into a way to actually, reduce the costs and turn it into a revenue stream. And it's just interesting because those are the kinds of things that without e-commerce would never exist. I mean, here's a whole nother business that exists on top of businesses like ours that is a great value for us. It's a great consumer experience. It introduces a whole nother marketplace for product on something that otherwise, like Dan said, would have no value and isn't something that we could logistically even deal with.
Yeah, and unlike Joe and Dan, obviously our industry, it has a propensity towards higher returns, but I think we've been pretty lucky in that our return rates are fairly low, and because of our network of sellers, they handle the returns, and we offer a 30-day return. Obviously, you have to be there for your customers to make sure people have that fidelity in the experience. But by and large, we've been, I think our customers have been pretty happy with what they've got. So return rates are quite low, but make no mistake, you have to factor it into your numbers. You have to factor it into making sure your customer service team is able to handle those requests. And on our side, making sure that our individual sellers are aware of their obligations and responsibilities as they're pushing product out. As a marketplace, we have to make sure that we're doing our part to support sellers and understanding what that is and knowing what their obligations are going to be. And one of the things that we've really tried to do is to limit returns, not by limiting them, but by making sure that listing quality is good, making sure there's very, very, there's very clear descriptions, there's good photography, and making sure that in terms of things like sizing, we are able to create a certain degree of confidence for the customer. So it's a big challenge, especially when they're in lower priced items. We want to make sure that there isn't that return going back and forth, but you have to be there. It's table stakes now for your customers. So it's as Joe says, we got to factor it in.
I do think that end user component is very important of trying to make it as clear as possible. And you've seen several companies do that well over the years. Sephora, which now lets customers wear makeup. You can see 20 other women wearing the makeup on a page versus just a picture of the product. That doesn't really tell you anything. So I'm definitely seeing that. And we actually have a question about the end user portion. We have US Vinyl Fence, a local company that wants to launch an app or merchant website. And they're kind of wondering, what does the front end piece of this look like? What's the cost? How do you make that transfer to get everything online so that you have this front facing customer experience?
It's a good question. I mean, the cost can vary wildly. I would, Chatbox was built back in kind of 2013, 2014. And I'd say that the tools that are now accessible to people to make their own, whether it's an app or their own e-commerce site, just have totally changed in the last 5 years, from Shopify to Stripe to, all these different platforms. It seems like it can be built a lot quicker and for a lot less than what we did, which was we built it all in-house. Like, we don't really have other than our merchant processor to process the transactions. We do everything else in our own system. And so I I'm sure we paid way too much to build our e-commerce platform relative to what it would take to build today. But maybe Taleb and Joe know a better estimate of what it would take to build an e-commerce site today.
Well, I think it's key. Again, if this is a more regional business, or just getting started, um, my guidance would be just do it. And the reason is, vendors like Shopify, who's the leader, yeah, effectively you can get going on Shopify with no technical knowledge at all. They've got a full service platform that you just, key in your products and price points and some photographs. They actually have their own merchant processing you can just tack on, and basically it just becomes a percentage of revenue. I mean, it's just they take a cut on everything you sell, and you're in business. And I mean, you can spin that up in a matter of a week. It's and the cost at that point, if you've got the content, the cost at that point is just the rev share. So it is remarkably easy to get going. The question is what your expectations are, because the harder part is not building the website. The harder part is letting anyone know it's there. And how do you drive traffic to it? How do you drive customers there? How do you help educate people? And that's where even companies like Shopify have some ways to help. But where you're likely going to put your money is not building the website, but it's finding some local agency who can help you start to understand how to reach customers, likely no differently than you've done with traditional media, in local markets with local TV or local print, local mailers. But how do you extend that into the online space once you've got a website to direct them to?
Yeah, I would say, if you guys are in the business of vinyl fences, but if, so Jane really couldn't help you there. But if you were in apparel, I'd say, look, get yourselves going, and we'd love to have you sell on Jane. But, the reality, I think, is that getting spun up, whether it's Shopify, whether it's BigCommerce, whether it's, WooCommerce, whomever you use to get yourself up and running, that part is really easy. And to Joe's point, it really is the beginning, not the end of that whole process. And then, you think about how you reach your customer, obviously traditional media, but you've got now great, easier than ever opportunities to get mind share in your local area. Facebook has done an incredible job of really micro-targeting folks down to neighborhood, demographics in neighborhoods. You can use Facebook for that in a very, very targeted way. Instagram selling is a great way to do things now. So there are so many different things that are available that probably weren't available, that certainly weren't available, 5, 6, 7 years ago, that make it much easier. Really, the thing to consider is what makes your story compelling. Why would someone want to interact with you? All of the things that you would think about in traditional media, but now delivered in a much more pithy, much more aesthetically pleasing, and frankly, much sort of more compact kind of way, because people's attention spans are shorter on those platforms. And you're paying on the basis of how much people interact with you. So you want to make sure that you're making the most of those interactions and making sure they're the most quality. So understanding who your customer is, what that demographic looks like, is going to really help inform how you spend the majority of that marketing dollar. And that's really, as Joe says, I think we would all agree, that's where the major focus is going to be. Getting your customer to your site is really your job, not necessarily getting that website up. And by the way, making sure when they do come to your site, their ability to transact with you is as painless as possible.
Yeah, I want to go deeper into a couple of things you guys mentioned. The first piece is the marketing piece, just because when you're selling online, you're up against Amazon and everybody else in the world, and you don't want to wind up on page 3 of Google, or you'll miss everybody that doesn't scroll that far. How are you getting noticed when by the time somebody types in mattress or shirt or photo book on Google, they need to already have some presence of mind that you're the one they're going to pick?
All right, who wants to go with that one?
Yeah, who wants to go first? I think it's going to be probably different for all of us. For us, traditionally within printed photo products, SEO was the game. And then when Chatbox came into the world, it was much more around Instagram and social media, and we built our brand on Instagram. And we just historically have never really, I mean, we've obviously done, work to rank high, but that's just not the primary source of our customers. Our customers are word of mouth through our brand, and then through advertising on Facebook and Instagram, and getting that dialed in. And I would like, as time goes on, to have more word of mouth and more referral and less having to give Mark Zuckerberg so much money. But it's kind of the world that we live in right now. But it marries well with our product, because we are, hey, print your Instagram or print your Facebook is a relevant ad as you're scrolling Instagram and Facebook. And recently for us, getting more integrated in Instagram shop, and right now Facebook, as we talk to our partners at Facebook, for them the theme throughout the company is commerce. And so there's just lots of work going into commerce, and you see it as you use Instagram. I'm sure you see all the different products, whether that's in an ad or a brand that you follow, and how easy it is to like click into, and now you're all of a sudden in a shopping experience. And last night I bought my own Christmas present for myself for entirely through Instagram shop, through somebody that I follow. And so for us, social media has been the primary channel for our customer acquisition.
I think for us, like Dan, obviously, thinking about a variety of different channels makes a huge difference. I mean, we've been very, very lucky in that we've got a great, we've got a very, very strong email program, which of course, for repeat business has been great. But we've been working with affiliates, and affiliates have been a fantastic source of customers for us. And again, thinking back to how this pandemic has changed things, there was a period of time when Amazon was really, really hammering their affiliates in March and April, cutting commissions and making it harder and harder for affiliates. And we said, look, actually, we think this is a great way to acquire customers, and we think these relationships matter. So for us, that's been hugely valuable. Social has been truly interesting. I mean, just before this, our fashion director did a Facebook Live for holiday, and it was great to see the reactions and see people reacting and shopping in real time. It was a really interesting thing. And of course, we're all dependent on, the big bad folks at Google and Facebook in terms of paid search and what that means. But the key is content, right? The key is make sure you have really good quality content that people want to engage with your stuff. You can spend all you want on advertising, but if it isn't compelling to people, they can't connect with it. It doesn't matter. And, we always talk about, this went viral, and that the virality of stuff is not because, it's well thought through and well crafted. There's something intangible about these things, and you have to be able to put quality content that is going to resonate with people. And that's how you end up doing well in search, but it's also how well you end up having people pass it, and getting that word of mouth effect and doing all those things that need to happen. So, being very intentional and thinking about a marketing strategy that is as much about budget allocations appropriately and making sure you're effective in using the technical data that gives you the right place to be at the right moment to bid in the right way, and also the intangible human effect. All of what the three of us are selling is stuff that matters to people in one way or another on an emotional level. And if you can't create that emotional connection with people in terms of the story you're telling them, doesn't matter how good your program is going to be, you're not going to do as well as you could.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought up the content side too. I mean, it's, there's again, all three of us are product companies. I years before worked at American Eagle Outfitters, so I've had my fun with apparel. In the case of Dan's and my product, it's a very limited assortment we sell effectively. And it is entirely around our custom product, our bespoke products that we have. So, in businesses like that, I mean, you can buy traffic. I mean, you can spend how you spend and where you spend matters a lot, but ultimately it's about the product and as Philippe was saying, the storytelling and the narrative. I mean, we founded our business on video. I mean, our launch 5 years ago was on a video that was designed for sharing, that was designed for virality. We used a comedy troupe. We used an agency that is very good at producing sort of a comedic commercial videos. And, and we made a video that at its core, though, was under the funny, was an explainer about a brand no one had heard of, about a product no one understood that had benefits that we had never talked about. So, it started with product. It started with what we were trying to educate on and built up from there. And then you find the right vehicle to do the storytelling. In our case, video was a great way to bring our product to life. And there was arbitrage opportunity. At that time, video wasn't leveraged as much as it was, and gave us a way to cut through and connect. Make no mistake, virality is purchased. I mean, it's not like you get a great video and and you can keep your wallet closed and it just takes off on its own. There's a lot of money you put in making sure that those videos have a chance of getting played. Now, virality improves the economics. If you buy your way into enough placements and enough views, it starts getting shared and feeds itself, and you get that flywheel going, and the overall economics start to make a lot of sense. But the idea that I'm just going to go sit in my bedroom, make a video, hit upload, and the thing's just going to take off. The likelihood of that happening is about the same as writing the next top 40 hit, and without any studio behind you or any publisher behind you. I mean, it's very rare. It's possible. It's very rare, and these are very, very expensive, detailed processes. But I think the key here is it's not about spend. It's about product and content.
It's funny, Joe, actually, my very first job out of college was as a buyer for American Eagle. So, back when I was a little fashion merchandising major. But yeah, we saw the same thing, and we would buy, I was in men's boxers, we would buy totally different boxers for online than we would for the store, because they would sell totally differently, and we had all the data. Super, super interesting how it works. But just a funny story. I want to mention the other thing you mentioned, which is making it easy to buy, making it easy for people to give you their money. This is definitely an important part of e-commerce. We've seen this a lot. There's been a lot of speculation about how one-click buying and purchasing has worked for Amazon. How people will leave things in their cart and not purchase things if they have to go through too many landing pages. What have you guys seen, and how are you addressing that?
I keep going first. I'll let Taleb or Joe have first
I'll
crack
jump
at
in.
it.
Yeah, I'm sure my friends here will approach this with many different angles, but I'm going to introduce one that isn't talked about as much on e-commerce, which is the role of human beings. We're selling a product that is a very large physical good. Feel, apparel's the same thing. Feel is a big part of it. And and it's an expensive purchase. It's a considered purchase. This is something I learned from my years earlier in my career in travel. The associates in stores play a very critical role. The experience in brick and mortar isn't broken. It's very good. The ability to engage with experts and associates who hopefully are not just commissioned and trying to sell at all costs. I mean, good brands, good consumer companies are truly there to help the customer out. And they're really good at what they do. They're really good at helping to educate the customer. It's why they have higher conversion rates. It's why they have higher order value. It's why return rates are lower, because the customer is getting a better education and better experience with the product if they have that great consumer engagement with a human being. We've been investing a lot in how do we replicate that online. And one way we've been doing that, and it's been a terrific growth engine in our business, is leaning into our associates who are human beings, but are not in a store. And it's our call center as a revenue center, not as a cost center. And that means building up and encouraging more people to give us a call and let us help talk you through which product, how much, what's the process, how do I buy, what's the risk, how would I return, on, with human beings who know the product as well as any associate in any store and are able to give that handholding. And whether it's chat, whether it's messaging, whether it's phone, it turns out the behaviors are all quite similar. I mean, in fact, the younger you get, the more likely your chat engagement is going to be every bit as lengthy and content rich as a phone call. So the channel is less important as it is the human engagement. And interestingly, when we have showrooms as well, when COVID first hit and there was lockdown in California, for instance, we had three in California, we had to shut them down. Rather than just having those associates go dark and not work, which is an awful thing for any leader to do, is take work away from your employees, we pivoted them to chat and put them as sales associates, what they did every day anyway, on chat. The interesting thing is, moving them onto chat, they actually in total produced more net revenue for the company than they were at the stores we shut down, which creates an interesting dilemma when the stores open back up. But it's a little example of the power of leveraging the assets you have and the importance of the role that human engagement and human content play online, where online is at its core a giant database and a very impersonal transaction.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, certainly everything that Joe said, that certainly resonates. The question for us is, at a lower price point where you're selling, different types of quantities in different orders. How do you create that sense of trust? How do you create that sense of comfort with the purchase? And so certainly in a store, the ability to interact with a human being makes a huge difference. We don't necessarily always have that luxury. So for us, it comes down to how well do we tell the story of the product? How comfortable and confident can somebody be when they see the images? Are the images trustworthy? Is our experience on the site going to provide them that level of support if they need it to talk to customer support or they need to send us a message? But in order for them to not have to go to that step, have we done all of the things that we can possibly do around making it as easy as possible to pay? Reading everything that they possibly want to know about the product, how to think about sizing, the different types of images, seeing those things on people. That's the other best effort that I think has to go into this. And you can't just throw up a bunch of two-dimensional images and hope people are going to trust you and want to shop with you. They have to want to feel connected to what it is that you're selling. Does the context of the image make sense? Does the story behind the image make sense? Does the story of the seller, in our case, actually matter to them too? So creating that, as much as possible, creating that human, bringing that human element to the online space is so helpful and so valuable. Look, I mean, Amazon does something none of us can really ever do, as much and as quick and as transactional as possible. But where it's harder is creating that sense of connection to what it is that you're buying, so the return rates are lower, so that people are feeling good about what they're getting, so that there is this sense of it isn't just a transaction, but an experience, is something that, we have to hang our hat on, because we do want people to be happy with what they're buying, and we do want them to feel connected to it. So that's creating that sense of connectedness to the product makes it a lot easier for the customer to then want to buy. And whether that's in 1 click or 4 clicks is less important than them actually saying, yes, I want to buy this. And that's something that we've spent a lot of time thinking about. And obviously, reducing number of clicks is key, but you want them to want to buy the product.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said here. For us, the majority of the business we do is through our mobile app. And so it's, our customer is at home on the couch or just out and about, and they're making their Chatbox in one hand and doing something else with the other hand. So it's like you only have so much time and you only have so much attention that you can get before the customer is going to bounce. And so we just, looking at our product and what customers are used to doing in order to create a photo book, the way that you would do it elsewhere is you sit down, you lean in towards your computer, you're working on a project, right? And we wanted to take what was a project into more of an e-commerce experience where it was in a couple of clicks, you had something and it was coming to your mailbox. And so reducing the number of clicks, which meant reducing complexity and features. And so when you buy a photo book from Chatbox, it's going to have fewer features than you buy if you were to buy that photo book from Shutterfly. And that's on purpose because we want to just reduce the number of steps from the moment that you start till you've purchased and you're getting your book. And so I think there's like, in terms of conversion rate, there's first order effects and there's second order effects. And the second order effects are what's the color of the button and what's the, all these little growth hacks that you can do to try and optimize your flow. But the first order effects are, the price point, just the features of the product that you sell that are going to have a bigger impact on your overall conversion rate based on, capturing that intent and getting the customer understanding and establishing that moment of product market fit to where the customer, is excited to purchase and complete the, whatever amount of work that it's going to take for them to do it, whether it's a photo book and I have to add 30 photos before I can buy, or whether it's a mattress and I have to decide, what size is right for me, or, there's going to be decision points that the customer has to take through the journey, and just how do you minimize those and make it as obvious as possible, and kind of what buttons to click and how to finish.
We did get a tactical question about software. For those of you that did have to integrate chat into your website, what are you using?
Yeah, so we use HelpShift as our customer support platform, and through HelpShift we can handle email. We can recently we added SMS, and then actually just this week HelpShift integrated with Facebook Messenger as well. So all through the same platform, we're taking all these different types of ways for the customer to contact us. There's lots of options out there. Obviously, there's everything from Podium to there's lots of things.
Yeah, we and since the question brought up Facebook as well, I think it's key to understand that chat is not one thing. So traditional chat on a website is session based. It's really no different than a phone call, except instead of voice, it's typing, which means you initiate a connection, you're speaking with one agent, it has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and when it's done, it's done. So it's a single session, it's a single sitting, and it's a different way of having phone. Messaging, like through Facebook, is very different in that it's asynchronous. I mean, if you think about the way we all message our friends and family, there's a ongoing chat stream that never ends and can have really significant delays between communications. It's just constantly ongoing. And it's a whole, excuse me, it's a whole different challenge to engage with customers that way. And frankly, most companies don't do that. We have focused much more on chat, and we use Zendesk on the back end, and it's all just integrated right into the same agent. So whether they're on phone or chat, it's all the same tools, it's all the same profiles on the back end. Messaging is just something we're starting to lean into, and it's really powerful because if you get it right, you're engaging with the customer on their terms. They have a question, they ask, you get back to them, the timing is a little different, they can respond when they want to, and you can actually begin to have a long-term dialogue. And done right, it's really powerful, but it's just a totally different thing as you think about something like Facebook. Facebook chat different than Facebook messaging as you get on. It really is a different thing.
Yeah, we, similar experience. We use something called Customer with a K. It's a CRM platform. We are now at a point where 20% of more than 20%, probably close to 22% of all of our customer interactions are done by chat. And so it's been huge for us in terms of being able to deal with issue resolution, in terms of our staff being able to support our team, being able to support that. But also for customers being able to get concision in the answers, right? So there is a way for them to see what they need to do. They can make a note of it. Everybody's operating off the same information on the same page. And it's been a really great transition, I think, in terms of how people are thinking about getting that level of engagement that they need. It's really meeting the customer where they are, right? In a time when we communicate like this rather than like this, being able to meet customers where they are is so important. And the adoption we've seen, particularly over the last 8 months, I mean, we really indicate that this is the way that people want to be communicated with, and it's up to us to respond and then to be anticipatory in terms of what they might want next.
All right, last question. Where do you see the future of e-commerce going? Is it drone delivery, USPS open on Sundays? What do we need? Where is this headed?
Oh, I wish I knew with a high degree of certainty. Everything will be purchased over TikTok. That's the future I hope for.
I've got a different, I have an answer that may surprise. I actually think the future of e-commerce is going to be much more omni-channel than it is purely online or offline. And I think, what Joe talked about a little bit earlier is an important concept. You cannot replace the human element of being able to pick something up, feel it, look at it, and then make a decision. But you also can't replace the efficiency and the scalability of online. So I think that the future of e-commerce is actually not just a shift in how online platforms think about things, but also how retail operations think about e-commerce. And so a store becomes a place where you go and look at stuff and try stuff, but it's not necessarily where you get that item right away. Online will mean you can order something and drop it off at a nearby location. If you don't like it, it may not necessarily be that branded store. So how we think about the entire omni-channel experience, I think, is going to be a much more important way of the future if we want to get this right. Because at some point, people are going to get sick and tired of just buying stuff on their phone, and they're going to get equally frustrated with going into a store and not finding what they want. And being able to close that loop and to connect those two worlds in a meaningful way, such that you're able to have the tactile experience when you want it, but the efficiency of an online experience when you want it, and to not feel any difference in the type of engagement and interaction that you have, and to not be lost as a customer in that process, is going to be hugely important. And so there's a role, I think, for all of us to play in helping retail and e-commerce broadly get to that place. And I think it's a very exciting set of opportunities that are ahead of us.
Yeah, I could not agree more. I think the question, e-commerce isn't really a thing anymore, because everyone is online, and everyone shops in brick and mortar and online. We're all the same customers, and what we buy online and what we buy in store is shifting. But we are all living in both the physical world and the online world. And when we're in our brick and mortar stores, we're on our devices, either with those brands or with those retailers. And when we're at home, we're often planning visits to go check out product, whether it's for showrooming or for education. So it all intersects. The winners are going to be the ones who figure out how to use that for good. Our showrooms, the majority of our showrooms, with the exception of our factory outlet, there's no inventory in the store. So, it's a giant e-commerce website. You go in, you experience the product, you either buy there on the spot and then it's fulfilled to you, or you have an order started there with their help. And when you get home, you finish the order later, but you're doing it from a position of confidence. So, or you buy online and go pick it up at the store. So, it's all coming together. It's just really doing the journey mapping of understanding what is the consumer demand? How do we better service them? How do we separate thinking about inventory and square footage from consumer experiences, and use all of that, for good against the consumer's needs wherever they are in the buying cycle. And that's who the emerging winners are, the ones that are able to more seamlessly do that. And I think it's really, the broader question is really, where do we see retail going, and not so much where do we see e-commerce going.
Yeah.
Another live stream. Well, thank you so much for being here with me today and talking about bringing our businesses online. It's definitely the future. It's here to stay. We're going to keep working towards it. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next live stream.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.